Now, believe it or not, even though people don't like to admit it, there is actually roles in Deadlock. Now, the roles aren't exactly clean cut, but they are in the game and they definitely do exist. My name is Duck Films, and I turn as rank player and team analyst for Rose Syndicate, and if you find yourself struggling to understand what your character does or what role they might pursue, then this is definitely the perfect video for you. Now, a lot of players know how to aim or a combo on their hero, but they don't understand what their actual job is once the laning phase ends. That's why you'll see players randomly take fights, farm the wrong camps, or completely ignore side lanes while objectives quickly disappear. The biggest mistake I see in this game between average and high-ranked players isn't necessarily mechanics, although that is a slight aspect. It's mainly understanding the role and understanding the map. With that idea also comes soul accumulation with roles. Who gets the souls? Well, you have position 1 through 6. Position being your M1 carries, or your mouse 1, your people that like to press their mouse 1 button, as self-explanatory. These are characters like Wraith, Venator, 7, the list goes on, you get the idea. Then you have your position 2, which is kind of like your off M1, if that makes sense. Your secondary M1, essentially. If you're playing a main M1 like a Venator, and on your team you have a, let's say, Mirage, that is essentially your position 2 character. You can also fit Pocket into this as well, but the idea is that it's a less needy of a dedicated solo lane where they still want to be in fights and can't really hard carry the end of the game, but still do enough damage to maintain, strength throughout the entire game with soul accumulation. Then of course you have position 3, 4, 5, and 6, but no one really talks about those. Maybe 6 and mainly just position 1 and 2. The in-between is a little bit hit or miss and sometimes varies depending on the game, of course. That's why knowing your, pseudo role is rather important, so let's talk about the roles. And that of course is starting with your frontliners. Now, your frontliners are the characters that want to be in the front of the fight, hence the word frontliners, basically maintaining the space for the rest of your team to do anything else. If you're familiar with other, hero shooters, these are your tanks from Overwatch, your vanguards from Marvel Rivals, just examples of what you're trying to see. Basically, the characters with the most health pool. You have your main frontliners, just like in any game, and you have your off tanks or your off frontliners, pretty much in every other hero shooter as well. But your, in quotations, main frontliners are only a couple in my eyes, that being Abrams, Billy, Mo, and Krill. Now, you might be sitting here thinking, why? You have characters like Shiv, Yamato, and Silver. Well, yes, this certainly is true, but when you think about a main frontliner, the main frontliner is there to contest the other enemy's frontliner, being able to maintain space, peeling when necessary, versus when you have characters like Silver, like Shiv, they don't necessarily hold a ton of space and want to be fighting more, so they're more seen as a off tank or a off frontliner. Characters that have a rather large health pool that can maintain a certain amount of space, but also want to be in the enemy team's backline, creating chaos and disrupting as well. This is why I view, only a couple main frontliners in this game as main frontliners, if that makes sense. Then you have your off tanks or your off frontliners, again familiar with other games. These are essentially characters that work in synergy with a main frontliner, still perform some of the same ideas and philosophy of being able to maintain some sort of space, but also excelling in other aspects, whether it's diving straight into the enemy's backline, being able to peel super aggressively for the rest of your team. These are characters, of course, like Celeste is sort of a pseudo frontliner. She has the ability to jump around, she has a rather large health pool if built correctly. Then you have characters like Geist, again, she sort of performed as a frontliner / M1 hybrid because she has a rather large health pool, can be relatively tanky, and she's also seen as an M1 because, well, she is a M1, if that makes sense. Then your other, pseudo frontliners are Shiv, Silver, Victor, Warden, and Yamato. Now, I get it, you might be sitting here thinking, why Shiv and why Silver? Well, the idea behind Silver is that she has to be able to transform, and she's a super conditional or setup type frontliner. She has to transform to be able to maintain that tankiness. If she's not able to transform, then she's only half a character in my personal opinion. Then you have Shiv, who yes, can be seen as a main frontliner while maintaining space, but realistically, this guy wants to go into the enemy team, wants to dive in, and he can't necessarily peel extremely well if he's in the main fight. This is why I say he's a little bit of a off frontliner, at least in my view. That same philosophy is seen with Yamato as well. It's kind of like Yamato, Shiv, and Silver are all kind of in the same boat, where they still want to build into a more rather tanky playstyle, but still want to dive into the enemy team and not necessarily get out of the fight and stay in the fight. Whereas a main frontliner will just maintain the space, whereas the off tanks will go in, create the chaos for the rest of the team to do everything else, essentially. And in my personal view, the main tanks, demand a little less souls in comparison to the off tanks, because the off tanks have a lot of carry potential. I'm not saying that the main tanks don't have carry potential at all. A good carry ability can be super annoying and super strong to deal with, but I'm saying in terms of kill participation, kill potential, engage potential, this is mainly your off role or off tank idea or philosophy. Is Silver demands quite a lot of souls to stay on tempo and stay on track and stay ahead of the game. Same with Shiv. The thing is with Shiv is that you can quickly get rid of a camp and get into the fight instantly. Yamato demands a lot of souls if she wants to get online, depending on what build she's playing. She's going more of a Spirit Nuker build. She has to build those items which require a lot of souls. This is why I say they're more of an off tank, because they demand more souls to be able to be in fights for a longer period of time. You also throw Victor into that mix, but Victor is more of like a hybrid, I would say, of a main tank and an off tank, where if he's super far ahead, he just goes in and dies for your team, essentially, which is a main tank's responsibility, is this, taking the beating, essentially, but hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Then you have your pick roll. Pick roll characters generally demand less amount of souls because their whole identity is going around the map and picking enemies. These are characters, of course, few not far. Paradox, Holiday. You could throw Calico into the mix, but she's more seen as, something else. But basically, Paradox, Holiday, Lash, and Haze. These are essentially your characters that set up kills. I would say, you could debate between like Calico and Drifter, but these are kind of like off carry roles, essentially, as well as a mix of Spirit Nukers. But those, what I previously mentioned, main characters, are the characters that set up kills, demand less souls because their kit really just revolves around a couple of abilities. Like I said, you can be super low on souls for a character like a Paradox, like a Holiday, like a Lash. As long as you get your ultimate out, your swap, your Lash ultimate, your Death Slam, and your Paradoxal swap, as long as you get those abilities out, then that's really about it with those characters. Yes, you could argue with a couple more, but I say in terms of pick potential, like Haze as well, as long as you get Echo Shard, you're there mainly to set up kills for your carries or for the rest of your team to collapse on. Now, in matchmaking and MM, it might be seen as a little bit different, where you need to scale up and do a lot more damage, but of course that's a little bit different. In more competitive style play, in Night Shift and in scrims, you see those characters more as a setup way, a less econ character to be able to, help their game get ahead faster. Then you have the role of a Spirit Nuker. These are your characters that are strong super early into the game, have a lot of potential to get a ton of kills, do a lot of damage, but tend to fall off a little bit into the later stages of the game, just based on how the game works, essentially. Where your M1, your gun carries scale harder into the game towards the end, your spirit carries are the exact opposite. They scale super hard in the early, then tend to fall off a little bit later on, and there's quite a few. There's Apollo, there's Calico, there's Celeste, who's a little bit of more hybrid in my eyes. Then you have characters like Infernus, who can be seen as an M1 depending on how you think about it. You have Mina, then you have characters. I guess you could throw a Pocket into the mix, but I see him more as a super hard carry character in a way. And that's really about it in terms of that aspect. You also have Doorman to throw that in, but we don't like to talk about Doorman here. But you get the idea, or even McGinnis. Characters that demand, resources in the early game that be able to snowball and maintain their strength and tend to fall off towards the end. That is essentially the role of the Spirit Nuker, and of course a great talent. Now, the cool thing about Spirit Nukers is they can also be seen as a secondary carry because they have a lot of carry potential. They have the ability to change the game in the early stages and pretty much, again, like I implied, snowball the game. Getting an early start, relatively early, with these characters can allow your team to easily win. Then you have your Mouse 1 or M1 carry. This is essentially your job farming. Farming is your job, hitting your item spikes and becoming the biggest threat on the entire map. We say M1 because mouse 1, you're mainly holding your left click, or if you're playing on a controller, if you're out there, you're basically there just to shoot your gun, and that's relatively it. These are characters, far but few, like Infernus, depending on how you build them. Geist, again, sort of a pseudo between a off tank and an M1. Then you have characters like Mirage. You have characters like Venator. You could throw Vindicta, Viper, Warden, Wraith. All characters that can easily carry the game if they farm just the entire game, if that makes sense. You are the character that requires the most amount of souls to be able to do anything onto the game. So if you see a side lane open or you need those souls, you tell your side laner to get off the side lane and take it for your own. Because at the end of the day, to be able to win the games, you need to be ahead. Then you have the role of the support. Now, supports in this game are a little bit interesting because, in my honest opinion, there's only one true support, that being Rem, who does the tag along, heals you, does a lot to help his team. Whereas you might have characters like Dynamo, Viscus, Page, others as well, Maginus can be thrown, Ivy in there. But I see Rem as the only true support because basically all the others that could be in this category are kind of played more leaning towards damage because that's how they benefit. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of characters can be built any other way you want, although there is, sublime roles to follow, I would say. If you're playing, more of like an Abrams ability, you want to lean more tankier, of course. If you're playing, a support, you generally want to lean a little bit more supportive because it's more beneficial for your team. Although, again, it doesn't really matter. But like I said, with supports, they generally don't require the most amount of souls to stay online. I mean, Rem gets souls from just running boxes and, of course, doing the centers. But besides that, they only have to hit a couple green spikes, and pretty much the support is good for the entire game. Now, I do want to throw this however in. I think there's a lot of ways characters can be built in this game. I think there are certain situations where a Spirit Warden versus a Gun Warden might be better here and there. I think you can build characters any way you want. It's pretty much however you want to play the game, in my opinion. But if you truly want to win and climb, building into the preferred role is generally the best outcome for yourself and the rest of your team. But like I said, depending on how you want to play the game is completely up to you. I mainly just made this quick little video to talk about roles for the upcoming matchmaking patch. Hopefully we'll see that coming out soon, probably Thursday, I would say, maybe Wednesday, who knows. But I'm truly really only making this video because I see a lot of people, not necessarily building the right items on certain characters, and for some reason it just really itches my brain. Like, we have so many gun characters on our team. Why would this person who can build Spirit also build into gun, and vice versa? But anyways, hopefully this video has helped you in any way, shape, or form. Maybe give you a little bit of insight to what I'm thinking about this game. Of course, my opinion can be completely different than your own, which is perfectly fine, of course. But like I said, if you're new here and haven't done so already, definitely consider subscribing to the channel, checking out the rest of the Deadlock content. I have a ton of content, and hopefully with the time MM is out, the new patch, we can be seeing a lot more players coming back to the game, and it would definitely be a lot more fun to see it. But anyways, I hope you have a great day. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I catch you in the next one.